Hey world, it's your girl Nina Love. Thanks for being here. This is my regular Wednesday video podcast. Every Wednesday I sit down and discuss different topics. No topic is ever taboo, but I usually like to talk about love and relationships. I was super inspired this week to do this post because of I watched an episode of Who Do You Think You Are? It used to air on PBS and now I think it comes on TLC. Anyway, I saw the Regina King episode last night and I'm sitting in front of my books. So, this is my pitch again for people to start writing your history down. So let me tell you about the Regina King episode. She was born in LA and her mother was a school teacher, educator, and she only knew about 2 or 3 generations from her mother. So she just knew names. And so she got genealogists and historians to help her track her journey. And it always starts on Ancestry.com. Along with writing in my journal, I'm also a huge family history genealogy buff. And I help several people with their family history. And so I love the show. And I usually like watching the show when it's somebody I actually know. So like Regina King, huge, I love Regina King. I'm a huge fan. So being able to watch her on this journey was very exciting. So if you can go look it up, they probably have the full episode on YouTube or on TLC's website, but it is really, I just love her. And I loved watching her episode. So she traced her ancestry back. They went to one particular person. This her second great grandfather. So it was her great great grandfather, her grandmother's father. Anyway, it was her great great grandfather. He was born in South Carolina, moved to Alabama, and everything they used to track his story was found in archives, newspapers, and court proceedings. And some of the things, the epiphanies she made, I believe he was born in he had to been born in the late 1700s. But she was saying that not much has changed. So there was one newspaper that was written by a clans member, the local clans member of where her great-grandfather was. And then there was another document written by the freedmen or former slaves that had become freed. So you have 2 opposing documents, very similar to what we see now on TV, Fox, CNN, MSNBC, all of these, they favor a particular side. So it was very, she said that it was very sad to her that things have not changed, including the way her great-great-grandfather was characterized in one newspaper, and then one newspaper was more accurate. So I say all of that again to pitch, going back to writing. And writing your history, because my posterity or whoever, I may never be anyone of consequence, but one day somebody will be so interested in what I wrote. Someday, maybe not this generation, maybe not the next generation, but the one after that, like 2 or 3 generations down, they'll be interested in who I was. And why, what's her story? Why didn't she have kids? Why does she, why? Anyway, whatever it is, I really enjoyed that episode with Regina King. And so it's my pitch, like I said, to start writing again and telling your own story, because what she was able to piece together through the newspapers and court documents was that it was very rare for a former slave to know how to read. And her great-great-grandfather knew how to read and write and was very literate. And he was an educator. She found out he was an educator. Not only that, he was a leader. He was out there helping people vote. So he was blacklisted and targeted. That's what it was called. He was blacklisted. He was targeted. And for because he was trying to get slaves to become more conscious. And so he was always a target. And one of the tragic things that she found out about her great-great-grandfather is that there was a particular incident that started his journey into the penitentiary. And it was dealings with a white man who said that he did X, Y, Z, and kind of exaggerated. And then they looked to retaliate on him for doing that. And they didn't find him at his home, so they killed his wife. And it was just, when you think about that, like in terms of your own life, like if you're with someone, your partner, and you did something in public, and then somebody in public comes back and kills your family. I was crying in the episode watching Regina King experience these emotions, you know, like because she's thinking, wow, you know, and if you put yourself in their shoes, like if it was happening to you, it's really emotional. And I just think, wow, he would have such an interesting story to tell if he had written his story. Do you know what I mean? And, you know, like to know all of the things that he had experienced, because we're only piecing things together by what is in court documents and newspapers. But he's, you know, every single individual, we have entire lives, whole stories about who we are and our background and what drives us and what makes us who we are, and the incidents in our lives and the experiences that we have that make us who we are. And if you had to look me up just by court documents and newspapers, like if you Googled me, my maiden name, the things and I'm sure everybody does this. I have Googled myself, and you would see that in the newspapers, this is so funny. I was the first thing that comes up is that I was the state shot put champion the year I graduated high school. So is that going to be my claim to fame when I'm old and gone? That if my posterity Googles me, they'll be like, oh, she was an athlete. So that comes up. The second thing that comes up is a letter to the editor that I wrote when I lived in New Mexico, and I was talking about hurricane popcorn. A letter to the editor. And so anyway, I did write that letter to the editor about hurricane popcorn, and the owner sent me hurricane popcorn. It was this nicest thing. It was such a surprise. And it was kind of exciting. Anyway, those are the things that come up. Those are the first two items. When you Google me, my maiden name, those are the two things that come up. And then if you put together the court records, you would get that I've been married and divorced twice, and that I was part of a sexual assault trial 2 times. So there's not much that if people were piecing my story together several years, or, you know, like maybe 100 years from now, that's the story they're going to piece together. When I have all of this, that they can read and look at. And so anyway, this is my pitch. Go and write your story. Even if you just start with bullet points. Born 1975. Where was I born? Honolulu. You know, like if you just keep, you know, going and doing bullet points, after a while, it becomes, you start to want to talk more and more about whatever it is you're mentioning. For instance, if I said, oh, I was born here, I was blah, 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 and we moved to such and such, then I lived in New Mexico, and I would say all of the stories on how I ended up in New Mexico and what New Mexico was like. Or if I said, oh, I lived in Kansas, I will say everything that led me to Kansas and all of the stories. But of course, I've already done that. In fact, my Kansas book is this is my Kansas book. This was right before I moved to Kansas. So this is November 20th, 2003 to February 11, 2004. Actually, I had not moved to Kansas yet. This was when I was still in St. Louis. This is Kansas though. 2004, February 12th, 2004. And this one all the way to 2006. I was back in Hawaii already. This here is New Mexico. I don't know, for people who are in the military, does this look familiar, these books? Because I got it from my ex who was in the Air Force. And I told him I want those books because I want to use them. They're the perfect size to carry along. So this is 1/31, 1995 to 11/23, 1995. I lived in New Mexico when I did this. And 06/30, 1994 to February 1st, 1995. So this was Hawaii and New Mexico. I'd already moved to New Mexico or moved back. Anyway, but all of those things, all of the things that can be pieced together from the newspaper and court documents, I have written all about it in here. And that there's a full and complete story about my life in these books and all of my journals. So get out there and write. And you don't have to be, I'm saying, just don't make it so complicated. Even if you've started 100 times and you're like, oh, and you put the book away and you don't want to do it again. Put the book away, and when you find time, pick it back up. Wherever you left off, pick it back up and start again. And so you can see that so the guy that gave this to me, he wrote a letter to me in here. And I cherish that. Like, this is 1995, and he wrote me this letter, and I love that. I love that I can go back and read and remember the feelings we felt, both he and I, when we were together. And I write poetry in it, and drawings, and little doodling. I have pictures, but I'm not going to show the pictures. You can do whatever you want in journals, and I just wish people would journal more often. See my high school friends? Some of them. This sister of mine, this was her in basic training. She passed away. But anyway, love her to death. So get out there and write, people. Go ahead and write. Write your own story and your history. It's your girl, Nina Love. Follow me on Instagram or Twitter or Facebook at Love Nina Love. Have a great week, everybody.